Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
You know that feeling, right? When you're just absolutely dragging the next day, wishing you had more pep in your step, more energy to actually tackle your to-do list, or I don't know, even just get up and move a bit more. Or maybe you're thinking, okay, I need to exercise more, so I'll just wake up earlier, even if it means cutting into my sleep. What if the secret to more active, energetic days isn't just about how much you sleep, but like when you actually hit the hay? Today, we're taking a deep dive into some truly incredible new research. It might just flip your understanding of the intricate dance between sleep and exercise right on its head. We've been poring over a recent health news article and a really detailed scientific paper, both published from Monash University in the esteemed academic journal, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
Yeah, and our mission in this deep dive really is to distill the most impactful insights from these sources. We want to help you understand not just, what the findings are, but why they are genuinely profound, how they might challenge your current assumptions about health, and really why they matter to your daily life. We'll break down the studies, explore their, far-reaching implications for public health, and of course, touch on their limitations so you have the full picture.
All right, so with a study of this magnitude, what was the burning question at its heart? What were they truly trying to figure out about this relationship between sleep and activity?
That's a great place to start. The core purpose of this research was basically to precisely quantify the connection between when and how long we sleep and how much moderate to vigorous physical activity.
Okay, that's like the heart pumping kind of activity.
Exactly. Anything from a brisk walk that gets your heart rate up to a jog or a workout at the gym. And also just overall physical activity we manage the very next day. The real aim was to pinpoint modifiable habits, things we can actually change that could serve as leverage points, helping us all become more active, maybe more naturally. They suspected there was a link, sure, but the strength and the specific nature of that link, well, that was the mystery.
And how did they even begin to tackle a question that big? I imagine tracking sleep and activity for like thousands of people is no small feat.
Oh, it was an absolutely massive undertaking, and honestly, that's what makes this research so compelling. The primary study involved almost 20,000 participants. But here's the kicker. They wore validated biometric devices, specifically these wrist-worn WEP devices, for an entire year.
A whole year, wow.
Yeah, an entire year. Think about that for a moment. That's nearly 6 million nights of data. This allowed the researchers to objectively and continuously measure sleep and physical activity metrics directly from these wearables, capturing real-world, free-living conditions, not just a snapshot in a lab,
6 million nights of data. That's incredible. How do you even begin to sift through that kind of volume?
Exactly. And they employed a very clever approach, sort of digging into this massive data set from two distinct yet complementary angles. First, they looked at what they called between-person associations, basically comparing one person's typical long-term sleep habits to another's long-term activity.
Right, like comparing early birds to night owls, generally speaking.
Precisely. So, broadly speaking, were people who typically went to bed early also typically more active over the course of the year. And then the even more granular level, within-person fluctuations. How do your physical activity change on a given day when you, personally, went to bed earlier or later than your own personal average the night before?
Ah, okay. So comparing you to yourself.
Exactly. It's the difference between comparing different people and comparing you to yourself, which really helps isolate the daily impact.
That distinction makes so much sense. It helps filter out all the noise. And to make sure the results were rock solid, did they account for other things that might influence sleep or activity? Like, I don't know, weekends versus weekdays?
Absolutely. That was crucial. They built in robust controls for a whole host of factors. Age, gender, body mass index, whether it was a weekday versus a weekend, absolutely. And even seasonal effects, because we know people's activity and sleep can change with the seasons. And to really hammer home the consistency of their findings, they conducted an additional validation study. This one had almost 6,000 participants from the All of Us research program using Fitbit data.
Fitbit data. Okay, so a different device, different group of people.
Exactly. It's provided an independent cross-check, helping confirm the relationships they found were consistent across different, more diverse populations, beyond just maybe the more fitness-focused WX users. This level of rigor, it really built confidence in their conclusions.
Okay, so with that incredibly robust data, what did they actually discover? Because what they found next is, well, truly fascinating, almost turning some of our assumptions on their head. Let's start with those long-term, typical habits, the between-persons stuff, as you called it.
Right. When they looked at those typical patterns, the results were pretty clear. On average, individuals who consistently went to bed earlier tended to be more physically active. To give you some concrete numbers, those with a typical bedtime around 9:00 p.m. logged about 30 more minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity each day compared to those who regularly stayed up until, say, 1:00 a.m.
30 minutes more, just from a typical bedtime difference.
30 minutes more. And even when compared to the sample's overall average bedtime, which was around 11:00 p.m., the 9:20 p.m. sleepers still recorded nearly 15 additional minutes of daily moderate to vigorous physical activity. That's a significant difference over time.
Wow, so 9 p.m. bedtimes translate to 30 more minutes of vigorous activity than 1 a.m. bedtimes. That's not just a small nudge, that's like a significant shift in lifestyle. But then this next insight you mentioned about shorter overall sleep duration across participants being linked to more activity, that truly is unexpected. It almost sounds counterintuitive to everything we're typically told, right, about sleep and energy. Can you help us reconcile that? Why might less sleep, on average, correlate with more activity?
That's where the nuances really come into play, and it's a critical point, actually. While it seems counterintuitive, the study found that on average, across different people, shorter overall sleep duration was associated with more moderate to vigorous physical activity. For instance, people who typically slept 5 hours compared to those who slept 9 hours engaged in over 41 more minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day.
41 minutes with less typical sleep.
Right. Now, this doesn't mean less sleep is better for you. Let's be very clear, far from it. Inadequate sleep has many, many negative health consequences. What it highlights is a complex dynamic. It possibly hints that some individuals might be intentionally sacrificing sleep to make time for exercise, maybe getting up super early. Or perhaps those with naturally shorter sleep needs are simply more energetic overall. It's a correlation, right? Not a recommendation.
Pleasure.
It shows the tension that can exist between these two critical health behaviors.
That makes more sense. So it's not a green light to sleep less, definitely not, but rather an observation of how people are currently juggling these demands. Now let's get to the even more personal level. What about those day-to-day fluctuations, the within-person changes? How did an individual's activity shift if they went to bed earlier or later than their own usual time?
This is where it gets really actionable for you as an individual listener. On a day-to-day level, when people went to sleep earlier than their own usual bedtime, they consistently recorded higher levels of physical activity the next day. Conversely, staying up later than usual was strongly associated with less physical activity the following day. Makes sense, right? And here's another crucial nuance. While sleeping shorter than usual, say, up to about 3 hours less than your average, was associated with more next-day physical activity. Wait. Shorter than usual still meant more activity the next day, like the between-person finding. Up to a point, yes. About 3 hours less than usual was linked to more activity. But, and this is key, sleeping longer than usual was actually associated with less next-day physical activity.
Longer sleep meant less activity. Okay, that's also kind of surprising.
It is, isn't it? It suggests maybe there's an optimal range, and deviating too much, even sleeping longer, might disrupt things.
Okay, get ready for the mic drop moment then, because this feels like the real paradigm shift, the aha that connects it all. What was the absolute sweet spot for next-day activity?
This is it. The absolute highest levels of next-day moderate to vigorous physical activity were recorded when people managed to go to sleep earlier than usual, but still got their typical amount of sleep.
Earlier timing, but the same duration they normally get.
Exactly. This isn't just a nuance, it's a radical reframe, really. It means your internal clock, that precise moment you start your sleep, could be more powerful than we ever imagined in dictating your next day's energy and propensity for movement. It's not just about the hours you clock in bed, but the timing of when those hours begin. It's that perfect synergy between timing and duration.
That's truly fascinating because it points to a very specific modifiable behavior. Just shift the timing, keep the duration. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what are the real-world implications of these findings for, say, public health and for us personally?
Well, this is potentially transformative for how we approach public health messaging. For decades, the messaging has been quite siloed, hasn't it? Get 8 hours of sleep over here and hit your 10,000 steps over there. But this research says, hold on, these aren't separate checkboxes. They're intimately linked. Imagine public health campaigns shifting their focus from just quantity to timing. What if schools started promoting earlier bedtimes for students, knowing it could translate to more energy for playground time or sports?
Or maybe even impact focus in class.
Possibly. Or employers encouraging flexible work hours that allow for better sleep hygiene, recognizing the ripple effect on employee productivity and well-being. It's about seeing the whole system, not just the individual parts. It opens up a new avenue for intervention, where encouraging earlier sleep onset could be a highly effective, maybe even low-cost way to boost population-level physical activity.
That's a huge shift in thinking. But what about those of us who are natural night owls? I mean, for us, hitting the sack at 9 p.m. feels like an impossible feat. Lead author Dr. Josh Leota actually speaks to this, doesn't he?
He absolutely does, and it's a critical consideration. Dr. Leota points out that standard 9 to 5 routines, or even just later societal pressures, can intensely clash with the natural sleep preferences of evening types. This constant misalignment can lead to what's called social jet lag, which is essentially when your body's natural sleep rhythm gets constantly thrown off, much like actual jet lag from travel, but by social obligations or work schedules.
Social jet lag, I think I suffer from that.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
And that, in turn, leads to poorer sleep quality and increased daytime sleepiness, all factors that can significantly reduce motivation and opportunity for physical activity the next day. So for natural night owls, this research isn't saying just go to bed early and suffer, but it does highlight a systemic challenge. Society perhaps needs to think more about adapting to diverse chronotypes rather than trying to force everyone into a single mold.
So for us natural night owls who feel like we hit our stride at 10 p.m. and beyond, this research is essentially telling us our bodies are in a constant battle with the standard schedule and often losing. It sounds like the advice isn't necessarily to force yourself to be a morning lark if you're a night owl, but maybe to understand the trade-offs involved.
Precisely. The study acknowledges that individuals might sometimes sacrifice one healthy behavior for another. Like we discussed, some might shorten their sleep to make time for that early morning exercise, thinking they're doing something good. But the findings suggest that rather than shortening sleep, going to bed earlier, while still getting your typical sleep duration, may better position you for next day physical activity. It's about optimizing the timing, not necessarily sacrificing precious sleep hours. It's a shift in focus from how do I cram more into my day to how do I set myself up for success by optimizing my internal rhythm. It feels like a far more sustainable approach to health, doesn't it?
It really does. Of course, no study is perfect, right?
Yeah.
And it's always important to look at the full picture and acknowledge the caveats. What are some of the limitations we should be aware of when interpreting these powerful findings?
That's a crucial point, always. One key limitation is the primary study participants, those using the WOP devices. While the sheer volume of data is impressive, you could argue these individuals might already be more health conscious and physically active than the general population.
Yeah, they paid for a fitness tracker, right?
Exactly. They subscribe to a health and fitness wearable. So, while the external validation study using Fitbit data from the All of Us research program did help confirm the findings in a more diverse group, it's still worth noting that the results might be more pronounced in an already engaged population. We should be a little cautious about generalizing these exact numbers to absolutely everyone.
That's a fair point. What else should we keep in mind? Any other limitations?
Yeah, a few more. This research also has limitations that future studies will need to address to deepen our understanding. For instance, it didn't assess long-term health outcomes. We see the immediate next-day association, which is fascinating. But we can't say from this study what the cumulative effect of consistent early bedtimes would be over years. Similarly, it didn't directly capture subjective sleep quality, how rested someone actually felt.
Right. The devices measure sleep stages, but not how you feel when you wake up.
Exactly. The devices measure sleep duration and architecture, but not that subjective feeling. And that feeling can certainly influence your motivation for next day activity.
And considering the time frame the data was collected, there's another elephant in the room, isn't there? The pandemic.
Right, you are. The primary study data was collected during the 2021 to 2022 period. That means it might have been influenced by mobility restrictions or altered routines from the COVID-19 pandemic. People's work-life balance and activity patterns might have been different then compared to pre- or post-pandemic times. And crucially, this is perhaps the most important caveat for any observational study like this. It tracked patterns and showed strong associations, but it cannot definitively infer cause and effect.
That's a really important distinction because we all want that direct line that if I do X, then Y will happen. Can you give us maybe an analogy to help our listeners really grasp that difference between association and causation?
Of course. Think of it like this. Sometimes you see data showing that when ice cream sales go up, so do shark attacks. They're strongly correlated, right? The numbers go up together.
Okay, yeah, I can picture that graph.
But does eating ice cream cause shark attacks? Of course not. Both are linked by a third factor: warm weather. More people swim and more people buy ice cream when it's hot. So this study shows a powerful link, a strong association between earlier bedtimes while getting enough sleep and more activity. But it doesn't absolutely prove an earlier bedtime directly causes the activity in a vacuum.
It's not the ice cream causing the sharks.
Exactly. It's a compelling piece of the puzzle, suggesting a strong directional relationship. But future experimental research, like a controlled trial where some people are actually asked to shift their bedtime earlier and others aren't, and then you measure the outcome that would be needed to really confirm that direct causal link. This study lays the groundwork beautifully, though. It shows us where to focus our investigative efforts next.
Okay, so pulling it all together then, what does this all mean for us at home? The senior author, Dr. Elise Facerchilds, she perfectly encapsulates it, saying, sleep and physical activity are both critical to health, but until now, we didn't fully grasp how intricately connected they are in everyday life. This research provides robust, undeniable evidence of that profound, everyday connection.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway is clear, I think. The timing of your sleep onset, specifically going to bed earlier than your usual time while maintaining your typical sleep duration, is strongly associated with increased physical activity the very next day. It highlights a powerful modifiable target for improving your daily movement and potentially your overall well-being. It's really about optimizing your natural rhythms, maybe, not just pushing yourself harder or longer.
So, for you, our listener, this deep dive offers a simple yet perhaps profound thought. Rather than just focusing on getting enough sleep or just carving out time for exercise, how might a small, intentional shift in your bedtime subtly reshape your entire next day? Could nudging your bedtime just a little earlier, maybe 15-30 minutes, without cutting your sleep short, be the quiet catalyst for a more active, energetic you, maybe unlocking that elusive pep in your step?
It's definitely worth considering experimenting with your own sleep timing. Even a small, consistent adjustment could, according to this really solid research, have significant ripple effects on your physical activity and overall well-being. There's always more to learn about our bodies and how to optimize them, and exploring this interplay between sleep timing and activity. Well, it offers a truly fascinating and highly practical path to potentially better health.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.